All right, yeah. So we are going to walk through the SearchStax cloud environment here with SearchStax, and I'm going to give you just a quick little demo. So as you can see right here, we have already logged in. I don't need to show you that piece. It's really easy. It's a username. It's a text box, and if you have it enabled in your account, we also have the ability to have a two-factor authentication. But once you get logged in, this is what you're going to get at. Now, this is our demo account. Our demo account has lots of deployments in it, but if you're new, you're going to just see nothing in here with the ability to add a new deployment. So what does it mean to have a new deployment? You can go in here, you can click on new deployment, and you get presented with the ability to name your deployment. So this is going to be a test demo site, and you can choose one of your three cloud providers, AWS, Microsoft, or Google. You can choose which region. So let's say you're in AWS, you can choose which region in AWS you want to use. If you're in Azure, we have almost all of the common regions. And then also same thing with Google Cloud. You also have the ability to choose your plan. So you can choose from the dedicated nodes, you can choose from the dedicated cluster. And we actually have two different types of clusters. Our standard or next gen. Most everybody is using the next gen clusters. The difference between a node and a cluster is that a node is just a single Solr server, but it's still a Solr cloud configuration. So it's still running on top of a Zookeeper cluster. It's just only one Solr server. And then the dedicated cluster is a Solr cloud implementation, but it's more than one Solr node. And it can be two, which is our standard, or it can be more than that. Then you have the ability to kind of choose your own flavor. We give the ability to create up to 32 gigs of memory per node. We do have sizes more than 32 gigs, but if you need one of those, reach out and we can create a customized solution for you. And then we also have the ability to select a version of Solr and a private VPC. Ignore the stuff in the yellow here because I'm an admin. We have some specific admin features. You will not see those on your own install. So once you've created your deployment and it is now in the running state, you're going to see it show up like this. And of course, we have several in here, but basically you're going to see your cloud region. So this one is set up in AWS and US East 1. It's going to show that we're using about 16 gigs of solid state drive space. Again, this is something that's configurable. If you need more space, that's something that we can do. And then it'll show your Solr version, whether or not your backups are in play, your subscription, pay as you go is our self-service model. If you're under one of our like gold or platinum or platinum plus, you're going to see that subscription show up there. And then our disaster recovery, if that's set up, and then the environment. So let's take a look at one of these. When we go into one, you're going to get more deployment details. But more importantly, what cloud is really a platform as a service for Solr. So your endpoints are what's going to be really important here. So if I right click on this and we're going to say open a new tab, this is actually the Solr admin. And of course, because we have some basic authentication. Oh, and my password is probably wrong. Let me go ahead and set that. Yeah, close. Let me go ahead and update that password. So now that I have logged in, you can see that it's a basic Solr admin. It's as if you were running it on-prem, but instead of all of the management that you need, you're actually able to get into the Solr admin without having to worry about the infrastructure. So then you can go through, you can look at your cloud settings. So this one has just one node, but if you had more nodes, you can see these nodes here. You can go and you can look at your collections. These are the indexes. And so once you have your deployment, you have the ability to create these collections. These are dedicated. This particular one is a dedicated deployment. So you do have access to modifying the underlying Solr if you need to add additional DLLs to the Java library, if you need to add additional configurations to the Solr config. You have the ability to use Zookeeper to actually get access to that. So going back to the deployment details, here you have your Zookeeper ensemble in case you did want to use the Zookeeper CLI. And then we also have a list of servers, and these are your nodes. Past that, the real meat and potatoes of what we provide is our service, is our monitoring and analytics. So if we go under monitoring, you're going to start seeing that we have the ability to monitor the cluster and also each individual node. And here we're showing like the CPU usage, the system load time, memory, swap usage. I'm not going to go through and read all these boxes, but you can see that you can also get a, if you start running into a lot of errors, this one will start to show a graph and spike, and we can actually set alerts to that if something starts happening. You also get an idea of like how much disk usage you're using versus how much disk usage you have. And so this way, as you start to increase your disk space use, you can get alerted and then and react to that before it gets to the point where you run out of space. Other things that we can look at the collections. This is the number of indexes. Again, nothing too fantastic here other than the fact that they're here. You can kind of see they're active and who the leader is, but for the most part, that's just a list of collections. Then we get into the garbage collection. So this is how well is the memory utilization happening within Solr. And you can kind of see, what the collection count is and the garbage count and the sweep collection time. And, everything should be pretty normal here. If you start to see irregularities in how these graphs look, then something may be up. The other nice thing we provide is the throughput and latency. So we have search analytics. So on the search requests, you can see like what's your average number of requests per second, what's your response time, what's your 5-minute request rate, 15-minute request rate, and then also your error count if there's any errors happening because of your search. And then on the flip side of that, we have our indexing analytics, where it's the average number of requests for indexing. This is putting stuff into the index. And so you can see here, our error count for the index, direct update handlers, and all the transaction logs. Last but not least, under monitoring, we have our cache. And so if you're utilizing or you have Solr configured for utilizing cache, this is what's going to go through here and show you your analytics. And so for the most part, again, I think everything should look pretty even and normalized here. But as you start to use the system and as more cache gets utilized, you can start to see if you see spikes in some of these graphs, there might be something happening that needs to be attended to. So when we talk about these monitoring, I've been saying, you can react to stuff. And what I really mean is you have the ability to set a threshold alert. Now, you might have noticed I skipped over heartbeat. This is really just an alert that says, hey, my server is awake and alive. It's a pretty easy alert, but all the alerts do operate in the same manner. So we're going to take a look at one of these threshold alerts. We're going to say create new. And you have the ability to select which host machine you want to look at. But more importantly, you can look at any one of the search analytics metrics and be able to do something with that. So for instance, let's say if our index error count becomes greater than 0, because we really don't want any errors, then we can go in here and start to say, okay, set our thresholds, set our max alerts, does it repeat? And then who do we want to send these to? Do we want to send these to an email address, maybe to somebody that's in charge of it? Or do we want to trigger a webhook? And this allows us to say, hey, we want to send the alert mechanism, the data for that alert, to some third-party source via a webhook. And I'll show you how those get set up here in a second. That's how our alerting structure works. We also have a list of incidents, and this kind of helps identify when incidents occur. And you can also create a new alert for an incident. Moving along, we get into our backup schedules. Now, out of the box, we provide a daily backup. But if you need to do additional backups or you want to have additional schedules for those backups, we allow you to do that here. In some cases, there may be like an extra cost that gets associated with backups, and that you'll get warned before any of that happens. Next, we're moving along into our logs. And, if anybody has ever run Solr, this is really where you get the meat of what is happening inside of your Solr nodes. And we actually expose the actual Solr logs. So if this is something that you enjoy reading and want to, have some casual reading time with, I'm sure these would be fun and exciting to read through. But they're here just in case we want to reference that something has happened. Last but not least, and certainly probably most importantly, is our security settings within the deployments. So we have 3 different types of security settings. The first one is really IP filter. And the IP filter is basically a firewall. So if you want to allow specific IPs to get access to your Solr environment, this is where you would come in and configure that. If you wanted your Solr environment to be publicly accessible, then we provide that out of the box using the default gateway of 0.0.0.0. But if you want to make sure this is locked down, then you would simply just click the X button here, and that would remove the default gateway, thus making your deployment completely shielded and private and not on the public network. The next way that we secure stuff, and you might have saw that I logged into Solr admin here as my name, Pete. Here you have the ability to create basic authentication. So you can create the user, you can give what kind of roles that user has, and you can set the password. So if I scroll into the next page, you'll see here I have a Pete's username, and I gave myself admin privileges. The third way that we configure deployments is through API keys. And so this allows you to connect to Solr indexes using basically a Java token, where by sending along this API key gives you access to the deployment. So that's the 3 areas of security that we provide, and this also concludes the deployment details that we have for the dedicated environments. So all of those details are things that we can provide as a dedicated environment. Now you might be looking up here and see, oh, look, I see the shared item up here. So we're going to click on that for a second. And these are actually shared clusters where maybe you want just one index. You don't even want to own any of the infrastructure for Solr at all, including even the admin. So our shared indexes are exactly what they sound like. They're a SaaS version of Solr, where we provide you just a single index endpoint, and we give you the ability to basically edit and configure your configuration files within Solr. And these are the actual configuration files that Solr comes with. So it gives you the ability to kind of manage those. The shared platform definitely is a SaaS product, whereas the dedicated is our platform as a service. Moving along, we have our utilities. So if you did decide you wanted to kind of white label your DNS and have your SearchStax endpoint for Solr to be something more branded and not as make it look like it's not going through SearchStax, this is where we can create vanity DNSs to really add your deployment to your domain to make them more memorable, to make them easier to remember, but also to maybe hide and white label SearchStax if that's something that you wanted to do. Here is our backup list. So if you have across all your deployments, if you've made backups, you can access your backups here. It also gives you the ability to restore a backup to a deployment. We also have the activity log. Now, this activity log is actually I thought I clicked on it. This activity log is the activity log within our SearchStax Cloud admin control panel. So here you can see that I had a login success earlier. My Karen, one of our solution architects, logged in. Darina logged in a little while ago. So it kind of just gives you some auditing and governance around how and who is logging into the tenants of your SearchStax Cloud. We also have an availability report. This particular one is not available in our demo account. But if you had if your account was slated for having availability reports, which I believe are available in the Platinum and Platinum Plus configurations, those would show up here. And then landing on webhooks, I've mentioned that we have the ability to connect to webhooks. So this is where you would add webhooks to whatever you want to use. So this one is like testing Google. And basically, hey, this is the name of our webhook. This is the URL of our webhook. And we can adjust the payload if we wanted to. And then you can also test it. And then once you have your webhook configured here, then you can use it in any one of your monitoring metrics as a thresholded alert. We also provide the ability to have virtual private connections to any one of the clouds, to either AWS, Google, or Azure. And so the setting up a private VPC is something that's done at the tenant level and can be applied to any of the deployments that you have that you create within that tenant. So here's where we define the private VPC. You will notice that there's no like add button or anything like this. This is because it has to interface with our data center. You would have to reach out to support or your customer success manager, or during the sales process with your account executive to go through and make sure that we have this set up, if that's something you need. Moving into third-party access, we have a couple different integrations that we make available. So one is PagerDuty settings. If you use PagerDuty to get alerted and you want our managed cloud or our SearchStax cloud product to alert you through PagerDuty, you can set that up. We also have a New Relic integration where if you just provide your license key, save that, all of our analytics and the ability to report into New Relics will be initiated. And so just by simply adding your license key, you'll start to see our information get populated. The last of these are really kind of boring. So here you have your user management, you've got your billing and payments, and then you also have your user preferences. User preferences are just basically your information. So that is a very quick demo of our SearchStax Cloud implementation.